Did you just sleep for 8 hours? Or 18? Did you wake up this morning? Or sometime yesterday? That's the strange thing researchers discovered in studies of people living in total darkness. Participants didn't simply lose track of time. Their sense of time itself started drifting. And that raises a deeper question. If darkness is nothing more than the absence of light, why can it unravel something as fundamental as time? Wait, maybe darkness isn't what we think it is. Maybe darkness isn't the loss of sight. Maybe it's the loss of a map your brain has relied on every second since the day you were born. And when that map disappears, the clock inside your head starts wandering. Imagine signing up for an experiment that sounds almost laughably simple. You walk into a sealed apartment buried underground. A steel door closes behind you with a heavy thud. No phone, no clock, no windows, no sunrise creeping through a curtain, no sunset painting the room orange, not a single ray of light. At first, nothing feels unusual. You eat when you're hungry. You sleep when you're tired. You read, think, wander around. Life seems perfectly normal. Then, slowly, something begins to slip. A few days pass, and suddenly you're no longer certain what a day even means. Now push the experiment a little further. Imagine someone with enough food, enough water, enough oxygen, and a perfectly stable temperature. No starvation, no dehydration, no illness. Nothing is wrong, except one thing. Light is gone. What happens next? Most people think they already know the answer. You can't see. Simple. Except that's not the real problem. The real problem is that your body begins losing its position in time. Hidden deep inside your brain is a tiny cluster of cells, often called the body's master clock. Its job sounds almost absurdly simple. Figure out what time it is, when to wake up, when to fall asleep, when to release hormones, when to repair cells, when to prepare for the next day. But here's where things get strange. Researchers have found that nearly every organ and countless cells throughout your body operate on their own schedules. Every day they look for the same signal, the sun. Not because sunlight tells them what the world looks like, because sunlight tells them where they are in time. Light doesn't just reveal the world around you, it tells your body when it exists inside that world. To understand why that matters, we need to go back roughly 600 million years. Long before humans, long before mammals, long before anything capable of wondering why darkness feels unsettling. Back then, the oceans were filled with simple organisms facing the same challenge over and over again. Day arrived, night followed, then day returned, again, again, again. At first, it sounds like a small problem. Why should an ancient organism care whether the sun is up? Because timing is survival. Timing tells you when food is available. Timing tells you when predators are active. Timing tells you when reproduction has the best chance of succeeding. Not beauty, utility. Not sunrise, survival. Over countless generations. Fossil records suggest life evolved internal clocks capable of anticipating environmental change before it happened. An organism that prepared for darkness before darkness arrived gained an advantage. An organism that prepared for daylight before daylight returned gained an advantage. And slowly, those timing systems became woven into the biology of life itself. What's remarkable is that the system never vanished. It changed. It expanded. It became more sophisticated, but it never left. Today, the human brain can build skyscrapers, write symphonies, and launch spacecraft. Yet, underneath all that complexity, It still runs on timing mechanisms whose roots stretch back into ancient oceans. New hardware, ancient software. One of the most fascinating demonstrations of this came from people who voluntarily disappeared underground. No clocks, no calendars, no natural sunlight, just isolation and time. Among them was an Italian cave explorer participating in time isolation research. The first few days felt ordinary. Day 3. Nothing seemed wrong. He slept, he ate, he worked. Everything felt normal. Then day 6 arrived, or what he thought was day 6. Something subtle began shifting. His sleep schedule started drifting. Hours felt longer, then shorter. The rhythm he'd followed his entire life began slipping out of alignment, quietly, almost invisibly. Then came day 7. At least, he believed it was day 7. And that's the problem. Without sunlight, certainty begins to dissolve. Again and again, researchers observed the same thing. Participants frequently underestimated how much time had actually passed. Some believed only a handful of days had gone by, when the outside world had moved much further ahead. Why? Because your brain doesn't track time the way a stopwatch does. It estimates. It predicts. It reconstructs. And without the daily reset provided by sunlight, those estimates slowly drift off course. You might wonder, shouldn't the brain simply count the hours? It turns out that's not how it evolved. Your brain wasn't built to function like a machine. It was built to synchronize with its environment. Wait, that's the unsettling part. The first thing darkness steals isn't sight. It isn't direction. It isn't movement. It's time. Because when the sun disappears, the ruler your brain uses to measure existence begins to bend. The deeper researchers looked, the stranger the story became. One of the clearest examples comes from Antarctica during the polar night, when sunlight disappears for extended periods. At first, the changes seem unrelated. Someone gets hungry at odd hours. Someone else struggles to fall asleep. Another person suddenly feels wide awake when they should be exhausted. Nothing dramatic, just small cracks. Then those cracks begin connecting. Hormones drift. Body temperature cycles drift. Mood drifts. One system after another starts following its own timetable. Imagine an orchestra suddenly losing its conductor. The violins keep playing, the drums keep playing, the horns keep playing, but they are no longer playing together. Your body works in much the same way. You are not one biological clock. You are billions of clocks trying to stay synchronized. Researchers estimate that light is one of the primary signals keeping that synchronization intact. Take away the signal, and agreement starts breaking down. The stomach says one thing, the brain says another. Hormones tell a different story altogether. Order becomes negotiation. Synchronization becomes argument. Day versus night. Wakefulness versus sleep. Signal versus noise. The miracle isn't that the body struggles without light. The miracle is that it stays coordinated at all. Because every second of your life, countless biological systems are trying to answer the same question. What time is it? If you're still with me, hit subscribe. Because what comes next changes how you'll think about your own mind. After several weeks without natural light, the story stops being about schedules. It becomes a story about reality itself. Michel Siffre discovered this firsthand during his famous underground isolation experiments. Cut off from natural day-night cycles, he noticed something deeply strange. Time stopped feeling reliable. Hours no longer felt like hours. Days no longer felt like days. Some stretched endlessly. Others seemed to vanish without a trace. And modern sensory isolation studies have revealed something equally fascinating. When the brain receives less information from the outside world,
It often starts generating more from the inside.
brief flashes of imagery, sounds that aren't there, unexpected sensations, fragments, not madness, compensation, because the brain hates empty space. It's a prediction machine, a meaning machine, a reality machine. And when information from the outside fades away, it doesn't simply shut down and wait. It keeps working. It keeps constructing. It keeps filling in the blanks. There's a reason one line keeps appearing in discussions of isolation. Remove the world long enough, and the brain begins building one. That's the deeper mystery hidden inside darkness. Not that it conceals reality, that it can convince the brain to manufacture a different version of it. Because when the outside world grows silent, the loudest storyteller left in the room is your own mind. At this point, there's an obvious objection. And honestly, it's a good one. What about animals that spend their entire lives in darkness? Cave fish, cave salamanders, entire species moving through underground worlds where sunlight never reaches. If darkness is so disruptive, why aren't they falling apart the way humans do? The answer turns the whole question upside down. The problem isn't darkness. The problem is adaptation. Those animals weren't suddenly thrown into a lightless environment. They were born there. Their parents were born there. Their ancestors were born there. Generation after generation, over hundreds of thousands, and in some cases, millions of years. Natural selection reshaped them for that world. Some lost much of their eyesight. Some altered the way they process energy. Some evolved entirely different ways of sensing their surroundings. Humans never made that evolutionary trade. We evolved beneath moving clouds, changing seasons, bright mornings and dark evenings. Not underground, under open skies. Darkness isn't the enemy. Mismatch is. Now we can finally demolish the easy answer. The simple explanation goes like this. Humans struggle in total darkness because they can't see. Sounds reasonable. It just happens to be wrong. After all, blindness itself is not the issue. Blind people live rich, independent, meaningful lives. They work, build relationships, create art, raise families, and navigate the world successfully. The deeper problem lies somewhere else. Timing, synchronization, coordination. The loss of the environmental signals that keep billions of biological processes moving together, that's the real story. Light isn't merely illumination. Light is communication. Every sunrise carries information. Every sunset carries information. Every dawn tells your body, start. Every evening whispers, prepare. For millions of years, Earth has been speaking to living organisms through repeating patterns of light and darkness. And your body learned that language long before you existed. Here's the part worth remembering. Light is how the planet tells your body what time it is. When that conversation disappears, confusion begins spreading through the system. Not because your eyes are under attack, because your internal compass is. Not sight, timing. Not blindness, disorientation. Darkness doesn't assault the eyes. It quietly erases the coordinates your brain uses to find itself in time. And this is where the story stops being about cave explorers, research stations, and underground experiments. It becomes about you. Because chances are, you've never spent a month in total darkness, but you may be living inside a modern version of it. A glowing screen at 2 o'clock in the morning, LED lights shining long after sunset, curtains closed throughout the day, bright light when your brain expects darkness, darkness when your brain expects light. Imagine trying to explain modern life to one of your distant ancestors. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human brain learned to read the sun the way we read a clock. Then, in a tiny blink of evolutionary time, we replaced that clock with notifications, monitors, televisions, smartphones, and glowing rectangles that never sleep, and your biology is still trying to catch up. Maybe that's part of why sleep feels harder than it should. Maybe that's why stress sometimes lingers, even when nothing seems obviously wrong. Maybe that's why exhaustion can show up after what looked like enough rest. Not always, but often enough to matter. And that's an important distinction. You are not weak. You are not lazy. You are not failing some hidden test of willpower. Sometimes you're fighting against biology that evolved for one environment while living inside another, and biology tends to win. Now let's return to that steel door. The volunteer is still standing inside that underground room. No phone, no clock, no window, no sunrise slipping through the cracks. Nothing but darkness. But by now, the story feels different. At the beginning of this video, it sounded like a story about isolation. A person trapped in the dark. Now it feels like something larger. Something stranger. Because this was never just a story about darkness. It was a story about a species whose body still depends on a star nearly 150 million kilometers away. Wait, that sounds almost ridiculous. A species capable of building cities. A species capable of building computers. A species capable of building spacecraft. And yet, every day our biology still waits for signals arriving from the sun. Fragile. Maybe. Or maybe that's not the right word. Maybe the word is connected. Across billions of years of life's history, countless species learned to use light, to move, to feed, to hide, to reproduce. But only one species learned how to reshape the planet itself. And in doing so, we accidentally created environments that separate us from the same signals that shaped us. Every sunrise you witness is more than the start of another day. It's an ancient message arriving once again. A message older than language, older than civilization, older than memory itself. Your ancestors depended on it, your biology still depends on it, your body remembers it. The human body remembers the sun. We still follow the light. Subscribe.